couple of weeks ago, we got an invite down to Pivot headquarters in Tempe, Arizona to check out a couple of bikes that they have coming out soon. Trailcat SL, Trailcat LT. They took us out on some trail rides on both bikes, and we got to see a lot of how Pivot does things. Prototyping lab, where they're 3D printing some lugs to assemble the bike in a slightly different configuration, all the way through to the, the carts that all the parts come laid out on. Everything, and even just the way the warehouse is laid out, like every box is in its place in a huge space, and someone can just go out and grab the exact thing that they need because they know exactly where it should be. Every aspect of the space, of the process that the bike is assembled in, the quality check that it goes through is just as thoroughly thought out as the bike itself in the design. And the bikes ride like that. It is known to be an engineer's bike, but there is an art there as well. Before we get to the specifics, we gotta talk a little bit about the background. We'll start with the Trailcat SL. This bike was a pretty direct evolution of the Trail 429. The Trail 429 was that downcountry bike, a little on the lightweight, low suspension side, but that had a little bit more to give than 120 millimeters of travel really sounds like. And a lot of people noticed that and asked for more travel to come along with it. So they made the Trail 429 Enduro, which had the Fox 36 fork and 10 millimeters of additional front travel. That bike did 50% of the sales numbers of the Trail 429 as a whole. So the SL here basically took that Trail 429 platform, the extended fork of the Enduro, and yet still sticking with the Fox 34 instead of the Fox 36, and made one lightweight, super capable cross-country meets trail bike package. And boy, does it rip. The Trailcat LT, on the other hand, took a couple of other side steps to come to the same ballpark.
The first shuttle was designed to be an electric switchblade, and that's what we pinned it as. And when we built it to the exact same geometry as the switchblade at the time, the front end would lift on climbs, and it just didn't behave like the switchblade. And so we wound up giving it a little bit more travel, lengthening the chainstays a little bit, lengthening the front end until we got it to behave just like the switchblade. But adding power in the motor did some things to the bike. Right from the get-go, the Shuttle SL was meant to be the Trail 429 in an e-bike, starting with the idea that if you're going faster on the e-bike, you're jamming into things, you've got the weight of the motor, so a little bit more travel is necessary. And then we're like, we like this thing with a little bit more travel, so let's bring it back the other way, which is really funny because the Trailcat LT now is the exact same travel as the original switchblade. So, yeah, full circle.
So with that lineage, what do these new bikes look like? Starting with the Trailcat SL, we've got 120 millimeters of rear travel, 140 millimeters of fork travel. Our head tube is 65.8 degrees, 76 degree seat tube angle. This is all pretty direct evolution from that 49 Enduro. Trailcat LT gives us 135 millimeters of rear travel with a 150 millimeter fork. Our head tube slackens out half a degree, so we end up with 65.3 head tube angle and a 75.5 degree seat tube. And it is worth clarifying that we are talking about two bikes made with the exact same frame. Front triangle, rear triangle are identical. The only things that change here are the rocker link, the lower shock mount, and of course the shock itself. We've gone over the numbers. How do they actually ride? Let's start with the Trailcat SL. To me, this bike stays really true to that formula that made the Trail 429 special. It is super lightweight, agile, it wants to come up off the ground, and it has way more to give than just the suspension numbers might imply. An experienced rider who is particular with line choice can get this bike to do a lot more than just those numbers might suggest. Both of these bikes are incredibly efficient. The DW Link is a really awesome suspension platform, and each of them feels super efficient. Obviously, the SL is going to be a little bit lighter weight and feel even quicker up the hill, but it's not like the LT is lagging far behind either. It's just a question as far as who wants to ride which one and what your priorities are going to be. The LT, on the other hand, didn't exactly light up the climbs the same way that the SL did, but any pivot bike, any DW Link platform is going to do pretty well in efficiency, and the added weight that you get with that LT platform is namely that suspension, and on the way back down the hill, that pays dividends. It has plenty of support for bumps, rocks, berms that you might run into, and really does a good job of kind of tracking a true line, keeping its momentum going where you're pointing, and keeping you well supported the entire time. With these two iterations of the same base frame, we have two directions that we see riders going in. If you are a downhill shredder looking to expand your collection of long travel enduro bikes, I think the SL is going to be a really good complement, offering a lightweight, super efficient trail bike package that can still hold up to the more hardcore riding that you might do with it. If you're coming from the XC world and are just looking to have a more capable trail bike that still pedals as efficiently as your hardtail or cross-country race bike might, if you are an XC or gravel rider looking to get into mountain biking a little bit more and start trying out some blue and black trails, the LT offers the same efficiency, pedalability. I also think if you are just getting into the sport and are looking for one bike to do a whole lot of riding and learning on, and the money to back it up, the Trailcat LT offers the efficiency of a cross-country bike with the added suspension that allows you to make some mistakes without paying the dirt price. When we asked Chris about the little details that he's most proud of on this bike, his number one answer was the tool shed in-frame storage that they've developed.
Yeah, I talked a little bit about the tool shed door, and it's interesting because we were so hesitant to put a hole in the down tube and go for it with that, and really so worried based on what we've seen in the marketplace on the way those things worked and just the mechanism of that latch and how smooth everything works. And initially when we had it working really good, but if you open the latch and you went to lift it, it was almost like you kind of had to lift and roll, and then when you went to put it back in, if the water bottle was on it and everything, you couldn't ham fist it. You originally had to, like, okay, I took it out this way, now I have to set it in and close this down, and it worked great, but I was like, this is just not idiot proof. It's like you're going to be on the trail and somebody's trying to jam this thing in and they're in a hurry, and it's like, you got to be able to take this thing, and if the front end goes in first, great. If the back end goes in first, if you go to shove it in sideways, if you can get those two things near that hole, you need to be able to just kind of shove it in there, and then that,
with gloves and everything else that might be going on.
And that's what we were able to achieve on that. And when you look at the edges on the inside and all the finishing versus other frames, when you pop the door off and look inside their frames, all of that it just turned out so clean.
We also have the traditional pivot touches of several mounting points for bottle cages and their dock tool system, and they retain the flip chip that has been available on all their frames for a long time. It seems to me that that flip chip is becoming more of a mixed wheel enabler rather than an actual kind of useful geometry adjustment, and Chris basically alluded to as much during our presentation. That's it for now. I hope you learned something, but if you didn't, let us know. Drop a comment, hit up our online support team, give us a call, stop by. All of us are always happy to talk about bikes. Ta-ta.
Who was the old Tour de France guy that got caught cheating?
Oh, which one?
The first one.
You talking about Lance?
Yeah.
Yeah.
He said
Juan Pelota?
He couldn't